Perhaps we can indicate to Melbourne that we're sitting.
Can you hear us in Melbourne?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you. Mr. Myers is just coming in. I beg your pardon. That's all right. Now, does anyone in Melbourne wish to make any further submission?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner. Again, Paul O'Dwyer, Senior Counsel for Mr. Sleeman. A number of comments about this report in general. Firstly, we say that when one looks at it, the proposition that there is force for suppressing it, we say is non-existent. We say when you contrast what witness after witness has had to spell out about the most intimate details of their life in the witness box, sometimes not anonymously, then this fades into insignificance. Without transgressing the details, we say that they are very common garden problems for a man of the Cardinal's age. There is nothing in this that, in our respectful submission, requires a suppression order. We say it would be unfair to all of those who have been looking forward and demanding the attendance of Cardinal Pell to not know the reasons. There is nothing in this report, we say, that requires or supports the necessity for a suppression order. We say the report should be made public. We say that not only as a matter of justice for the victims, but also on the question of ordinary fairness. In other words, so the reasons for Cardinal Pell's inability to give evidence is known. We say that in relation to the contents of the report, that they do support on their face the proposition that he would have difficulty travelling to Australia. We don't contest that proposition. We do advance with all the force we can muster that this report should be made public.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else?
Just an additional point on behalf of my other two clients that I appear for. There has been no ability for us as counsel to obtain instructions, and we of course are not trained cardiologists and cannot query the actual substantive conclusion that is reached on the second page, that the conditions as outlined by Mr. O'Dwyer necessitate an inability to travel. So we are left with the report at face value, and in those circumstances it is a further matter that requires, in our submission, the report to be made public and to be capable of scrutiny, especially if the application is to be granted, given, for the reasons that Mr. O'Dwyer has advanced, the substantial pain and suffering that has been experienced by many victims as a result of this issue. There is the need for transparency in these matters, and the conditions as outlined in that report, were they to be capable of challenge, are not capable of challenge by us. We accept the report at face value in relation to its conclusion, but we contest particularly the matters contained on the second page remaining confidential.
Yes, thank you. Is there... We've lost the picture.
Cassie, sir.
We can't see you at the moment. I think we can hear you, though.
Sorry, Your Honour. I'll wait till I hear that you can see me again.
I don't know how long that will be. Maybe
Are you happy?
We can
for
hear.
me to talk?
Yeah, we can hear you clearly. So perhaps you might make your submission.
Thank you. I'll confirm it's Mr. Pell, and I endorse the submissions made by Mr. O'Dwyer, and we, on behalf of the three of my clients, press for the release generally of the report. It's apart from endorsing the comments made by Mr. O'Dwyer, it would seem that the fourth last paragraph would have no particular resonance outside of the ordinary man, as Mr. O'Dwyer says, of that age.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
No one else down there? Do you want to say anything?
If the Commission please. As Mr. O'Brien says, I think nobody in the room is a trained cardiologist. However, there are multiple expert cardiologists available from whom the Commission might seek an opinion as to whether the condition outlined might not be easily met during the journey by some simple physical supports. An obvious instance that comes to the lay mind, of course, is the provision of oxygen. If the Commission sought such expert evidence from an independent and objective cardiologist reading the report and perhaps acquiring any further clinical information needed, in my submission the Commission might be in a much better position then to assess this application. Other than that, I seek to say no more.
Yes. Mr. Myers, do you want to respond to any of that?
With some hesitation, I've really said what I want to, sir. There's no public interest in a debate about Cardinal Pell's health. This is very much a matter for the Commission to determine as a matter of practice about how it's going to conduct itself. And it has two medical opinions that are highly persuasive on the subject, and we rely upon them. We certainly object to the release of the entirety of the report, unless, of course, there appears to you certainly some reason why that should happen that is not apparent. All it will do is provoke some sort of a debate in the press about the medical condition of Cardinal Pell, and there's no public interest in that.
No, but there is a true interest in those who are concerned in this matter properly understanding what the doctors have said. That doesn't mean necessarily disclosing the whole report. But
no, well, I did say the last two paragraphs before. If it's the last 4 paragraphs, then I would accept that readily.
I'll think about that position.
Yes. I take the point that's been made by some that the conclusory paragraphs are not a matter that should cause great embarrassment to my client. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Finnis.
Your Honour, one additional matter in relation to Cardinal Pell appearing in person or by video link. The part of the medical report which has been made public refers to a long journey. As I think it is commonly known, there are a number of ways of travelling to Australia which would permit shorter journeys to be made, albeit over a longer period of time. Now, I don't know whether my friend has considered alternate ways in which the Cardinal could travel in order to meet the concerns of the medical report but nevertheless appear in person.
Well, I don't know. As I said earlier, there's clearly a need to bring the relevant hearings to a conclusion at an early date. And I'm not sure that ultimately it's going to be profitable to explore too far beyond what has been provided by way of evidence today, but I won't make a decision about the matter today. I'll think about it over the weekend. I understand what you say. I mean, there are other means of getting eaten. One can come by ship, I suppose. But there is a need to bring the matter to an end in everyone's interests as soon as we can conveniently do so. Is there anything else you want to say?
Just a couple of matters, if I may, Your Honour. There's been discussion about if a video link is determined and if that occurs in Sydney, there will be a need for, as Your Honour's foreshadowed, somebody from the Commission to travel, and probably a technical person as well, to travel to Rome. So there needs to be sufficient time for that to occur, and I've no doubt that others will want to make similar arrangements. In addition, the question of the timing is a real one. Now, I understand that my friend has indicated it's ultimately a matter for your judgment, Your Honour. However, it may be useful to have more of a discussion in relation to the effect of determining a particular time. So, for example, if it was to be held at 5 p.m. Sydney time, that would be 7 a.m. Rome time. And if there was to be a period of some 4.5 hours, which is the usual sitting time, including the necessary breaks, the sitting time would extend well into the evening.
I understand that. I should have asked earlier, but how long do you think you will need yourself with Cardinal Pell?
Well, at this stage,
to deal with both Ballarat and Melbourne?
Yes, given the fact that there's 2 case studies and the complexity of each, it would be a minimum of 2 days, Your Honour. I'd be surprised if it extended beyond 3.
And what about others? Those in Melbourne, have you thought about how long you might need with Cardinal Pell?
My part, no, Your Honour, but it ought not be in excess of an hour.
What about the others?
As usual, Your Honour, it would also depend upon what was clearly canvassed in the 2 or 3 days and the answers to the questions asked by Counsel assisting, but I think I can reasonably comfortably say that I wouldn't require more than an hour myself.
Anyone else?
On behalf of the other 2 witnesses, I would also, it does depend on what has gone before, and but we would not expect to require more than an hour. Your Honour.
An hour, perhaps an hour and a half, Your Honour.
Very well. And
Similarly, Your Honour, I would be surprised to go over an hour.
well, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there.
That's all right, Your Honour. I would have jumped up if I wanted to be heard, but I hear on
I'm sorry, I didn't see you at all. But,
Your Honour, you would have heard from me if I wanted to be seen.
I think that's probably right.
Your Honour. But an hour for me as well, Your Honour.
Right. Well, that sounds like at least 3 days, doesn't it?
Well, depending upon the definition of a day, Your Honour,
Well,
given that they're evenings.
well, Mr. Myers, we would have to contemplate 3 days, maybe a little more, depending upon, as Mrs. Finesse says, how long is reasonable to sit each day.
Yes.
With appropriate breaks as well, both at this end and the other end.
Yes. Well, we've all heard what everyone else has said, and I think probably we should go home and digest it, and then there can be some discussion between Counsel and with the Commission about what are the desirable times and dates.
Very well. Well, what I'm going to do, both in relation to this matter and Bishop Mulkearns, is I'm going to give you a decision on Monday.
Thank you.
It'll be at 1:45 on PM on Monday afternoon.
Thank you.
Is there anything further then?
Not in relation to Cardinal Pell, Your Honour.
Very well. Well, Bishop Mulkearns, but Mr. Myers, you don't have a need to stay.
No, thank you, sir.
and anyone else who doesn't have a concern with Bishop Mulkearns may, of course, go. Well, what's the position with Bishop Mulkearns, Mr. Ness?
In relation to Bishop Mulkearns, in my opening in Melbourne, I indicated that the Royal Commission had accepted medical evidence that the bishop was in palliative care and was unfit to give evidence at the hearings in Melbourne. The question of his ongoing fitness or unfitness was left. There has been received a report by those representing Bishop Mulkearns, and perhaps I'll leave it to those representing him to make an application.
Yes, there's an application then.
Yes, my name's David Grace. I appear for Bishop Mulkearns. Your Honour, I seek a confidentiality order in respect of the reports that have been provided. The reports include reports from the oncologist and also from the Professor of Medicine, the geriatrician.
I think we need to get the reports into evidence first.
Yes, I'll seek to tender those reports, sir.
Perhaps if my friend can identify what he means by reports, plural.
The reports are the report of Dr. Fonda, dated 23 January 2016, and the reports of Dr. Cardin, C-A-R-D-E-N, dated 17 December 2015 and 18 October 2015. The report of Dr. Fonda has considered two neuropsychological reports which have been prepared and are referred to in that document. I'm not sure whether the Commission has received those reports or not. Perhaps
Not,
Ms. Ernest can indicate.
not that I'm aware of.
Well, I don't seek to tender those reports. They're sufficiently referred to in the report of Dr. Fonda. I seek confidentiality of those reports because of the sensitive nature of their contents and also embarrassment.
Mr. Grace, you heard what happened with the report in relation to Cardinal Pell. Are you saying that Counsel shouldn't see these reports?
Yes, I am. And the reason I'm saying that, sir, is because the problem about Dr. Fonda's report is that it delves into matters that may well become the subject of cross-examination if made available. And I say that not because...
I don't have a copy of the report before me. I presently don't understand what you're talking about. Can you direct me to the relevant paragraph?
For instance, if I could refer you to dot point 3 under the heading specific questions on page 5.
Well, I'm not sure about that, Mr. Grace, but yes. Anything else?
Yes. The second last dot point under subparagraph B on page 5.
Well, that goes to the heart of the assessment, doesn't it? I'm not sure why it would become a matter of cross-examination and prejudices the fairness of the process.
Could I refer you also to the dot points at the top of page 6?
Yeah.
Under point 4 on page 6.
Yeah.
You'll see the first dot point and the third dot point, fourth dot point.
But they're highly relevant to any decision that I make. Even if I don't give counsel a report, you could assume that I'm going to have to talk about those matters in any reasons I give.
Yes, I accept that you may wish to talk about those matters, and I have no objection to that. But my concern is that whether consciously or subconsciously, the contents of this report, if released to counsel who are intending to cross-examine Bishop Mulkearns, it may inform the content of questions which will result in severe embarrassment to Bishop Mulkearns.
I confess I have difficulty understanding that submission. You see, your application, as I understand it, is that Bishop Mulkearns not give evidence at all. Correct?
No, that is not my application.
What is your application?
My application is Bishop Mulkearns is willing and wishes to give evidence. His concern is what's contained in part in this report. He does not wish to mislead the Commission.
Well, let me stop.
He does not want...
Just let me stop you a moment. If you're saying that Bishop Mulkearns wishes to give evidence, then why do we need to discuss the matter further? We'll just make arrangements for him to give evidence.
Well, I thought that was the purpose of today's hearing. So.
I had understood otherwise, but if Bishop Mulkearns wishes to come to the hearing and give evidence, then we'll make appropriate arrangements.
Bishop Mulkearns does not wish to come to the hearing to give evidence. He wishes the hearing to come to him. And the report supports that application.
I understand it is presently living in a nursing home facility, is that right?
Yes, he is.
I can't conceive of how we could get a proper and fair hearing in the nursing home in relation to Bishop Mulkearns.
Well, we would seek a video link to that nursing home be organised. The nursing home is not a great distance away from the facility in Ballarat in which the Commission would be sitting. And the provision of documentary material to him would be easy and would be able to be facilitated without too much trouble at all.
How do we get a video link to a nursing home?
Through either a Skype facility or some other available facility, sir.
Well, I presume you've thought about it. Skype, as we learned with Cardinal Pell, and discarded it for the reason that of its unreliability. I haven't looked at it in relation to Bishop Mulkearns, but have you?
No, I have not tested the facility, sir. But appropriate tests could be made well in advance of the hearing, or an alternative means, perhaps organised.
What's the alternative?
An alternative would be some closed-circuit TV facility, common, that you see with interviews conducted by television stations at various locations outside a particular television station. and live interviews being beamed into a external facility, such as a courtroom.
Have you talked to the nursing home about this possibility?
Sorry, sir, I didn't hear that.
Have you talked to the nursing home about this possibility?
Dr. Fonda talks of it in his report.
No, but have you?
No, I have not.
I mean, is the nursing home...
And my instructor had.
Sorry?
We can make inquiries of the nursing home as to the availability. My understanding is that Dr. Fonda has formed the opinion that it is possible from the nursing home. There is a room there that would be available to conduct this type of hearing with sufficient privacy.
As I understand it, the medical evidence suggests that Bishop Mulkearns will have difficulty responding to any question. Is that right?
He would have difficulty responding if given insufficient time, insufficient prompts, or not given the written material in advance so that he could prepare himself for some questioning. Could I take you to...
Just a minute, Mr. Gray. As I understand it also, it suggested that he could only respond to questions for about an hour and a half and would then need to rest for a number of days before he could resume a hearing.
That's correct, sir.
Is that a satisfactory way for us to proceed?
Well, it's an unsatisfactory way, but it's the only way given his condition.
Very well.
Perhaps if I could just ask you to look at dot point number 6 on page 6 of the report.
Yes.
That gives you the indication in a general sense of what the problem is.
Yes. Well, whatever decision I make, everyone's going to have to know that.
Yes.
I mean, I can't see how one could keep that confidential, Mr. Grace.
No, I appreciate that, but it's the general specifics of the report, and certainly there's no need for anyone to be made aware of the contents of the reports of Dr. Cardinal, the oncologist, other than to say, and I'll say it openly, that Bishop Mulkearns has advanced colon cancer. His life expectancy is in the matter of months. He's in palliative care in a nursing home, and he's very frail. He's lost considerable amount of weight. He weighs approximately 50 or 55 kilograms, and he's in chronic pain and deteriorating. And that ought to be sufficient for everyone's purposes to know, but notwithstanding, he does make himself available and does not seek to be excused from appearing before the Commission, provided that he is accommodated in the way in which Dr. Fonda suggests in his report.
Would it be likely that the questions that he would be asked if he gave evidence, and given his difficulties in responding, that his evidence is going to take well over an hour and a half?
Oh, yes, of course, sir. I appreciate that.
What do we do about that?
Well, it would have to be spread over a number of days or weeks.
What are you suggesting? That we do an hour and a half one day and then come back 3 weeks later and do another hour and a half?
No, I suggest that we do an hour and a half one day and come back 3 or 4 days later.
That's inconsistent with the report, isn't it? The report says weeks.
The report says...
Days.
Days, does it? I'm sorry. Days, does it?
Yes.
Very well. All right. Well, Ms. Finesse, we need to mark these reports of Dr. Fonda and Dr. Cardinal. What exhibit numbers should we give them?
case study 28E.
28E.
Your Honour, there's just one...
Just a second. Mr Grace, I hear what you say about keeping them confidential. What else do you wish to say?
There's an overriding concern that Bishop Mulkearns has. You'll see it in the last dot point on page 7. Which may be the overriding consideration for Your Honour's judgment as to whether to seek to pursue the evidence of Bishop Mulkearns or to excuse him absolutely.
Well, you tell me what he wants to do. It's your application.
Bishop Mulkearns is... It's Bishop Mulkearns wishes to give evidence, but the contents of that evidence are potentially problematic.
What?
Well, you better explain that to those listening. What do you mean?
His concern is that his memory for detail is poor. He might give incorrect answers. He may inadvertently and unintentionally mislead the Commission or persons who are questioning him. He may be seen to be evasive when he is not. And it's a matter as to the reliability in the end of what that evidence is, as to what usefulness it could potentially have to the ultimate findings of the Commission.
Yes, very well.
Now,
but your application is that we should require him to give evidence.
yes, we don't seek to have him excused. We certainly, as on my instructions, he wishes to be available to give evidence, but his concerns are as I've just expressed. But because of his state of health and the potential effects of lengthy cross-examination in a public setting, my submission is that an accommodation be made for him, arrangements be made to have that evidence by the external video link that has been suggested.
If there was an external video link, there'd have to be a number of people present,
Yes.
including from the Commission when that occurred. Do you understand?
Yes, that's appreciated.
And of course there'd be public knowledge of what's happening and where he was located at the time.
Well, we would seek to have that public location suppressed.
Well, you can't. It's a nursing home that everyone, as I understand, in Ballarat knows about.
Well, that's not my understanding, sir.
Well, I think you might find that a lot of people know where he is.
Yes. It's not just concern for him with public knowledge of where it is, but it's also concern for the other residents.
I know, that's the issue that I have in mind, you see. You can imagine that if we took up your suggestion, what would happen would be that people would be likely to gather at the nursing home or outside it.
Well, it's possible then for us to make inquiries as to whether there's a neutral location that would be available, that would not be known.
So the concern is not necessarily to have him stay in the nursing home, but not to have him face a courtroom. Is that right?
Yes, that's one of the concerns that Dr. Fonda indeed expresses, which would impact upon his ability to give evidence because of the stress involved.
Yes.
Your Honour, might I just raise one issue?
Yeah.
On page 7, paragraph D, the 5th dot point, and with Your Honour's permission I'll read it. If his evidence was given in camera and with the above structured framework recommended, then I believe Bishop Mulkearns would cooperate and be able to participate, notwithstanding it being a stressful process. Now, leaving aside the medical nature of that opinion, I'm not clear on my friend's application as whether it is that he give evidence but only give evidence in camera, that is, in private.
No, it's not my application.
Very well. Is there anything more you want to say, Mr. Grace?
No, nothing, sir.
Now, what do other counsel, if any, wish to say about this application?
Your Honour, I appear on behalf of BPD as a witness, and we've only just received a proper understanding as to the basis of the application. There are two aspects to it. First of all, the confidentiality of the reports. In this instance, there has been a resistance to a provision even to counsel, so we're in a very difficult position to even respond to that application.
Do you want access to them?
Well, it depends on how Your Honour is to treat the application. We would say fundamentally, yes, that would be a right and an application that we make, but we'd say more fundamentally than that, that these reports should fundamentally be disclosed on the public record if they are to support these very serious applications. In this instance, as I now understand my learned friend Mr Grace's application, it is not to... He accepts that Bishop Mulkearns can give evidence, which is pleasing news to my client and I imagine many other victims. Of course, I'm not in a position to obtain immediate instructions, but my client has had direct conversations with Bishop Mulkearns, as he then was. And one of the things that we all are concerned about is if it is the case that Bishop Mulkearns is approaching death, then it is important as a matter of record that some of these matters that have been in dispute with the Catholic Church and with Bishop Mulkearns and the Ballarat Diocese for many, many, many years, and of course much pain and anguish, that there be an opportunity for admissions to events that have occurred and to matters that should have taken place, proper acknowledgements of remorse and proper apologies to come from the Bishop. And if the Bishop is not in any position to give evidence, then those opportunities may well be lost by Bishop Mulkearns' impending death if he is in a palliative state, as we don't dispute that he is. So we request that any facility be made available for the giving of evidence from Bishop Mulkearns, including matters akin to interrogatories or depositions or video evidence with questions on notice, be given as a fundamental principle of the Commission rather than not having opportunity for evidence altogether. As counsel for witnesses, we are obviously in the Commission's hands as to which witnesses are called for each case study, and indeed the lawyers representing the Commission have, I might say with respect, done an excellent job in seeking to deal with the issues of relevance and capacity. But we note that other witnesses, certainly including victims, but other priests of an age and including have given evidence notwithstanding physical incapacities. And as to the veracity of the evidence, the latter points made by Mr Grace, if there is a non-responsive, I can't recall, type of response, or a process that the evidence is not credible as to what is said on the face of the documents, then those matters can be assessed in the light of the evidence itself and can be dealt with fundamentally with a knowledge of the medical condition. That is why, going back to the start of this application, we would say that the fundamental principle, both in relation to Cardinal Pell's position and Bishop Mulkearns, is that this is a public hearing, this is in public inquiry. Unless there's a very good reasons, documents tendered ought to be made public and ought to be capable of public scrutiny and to stand on the public record. In this instance, we would request that those reports be made public. If it is that there are matters that would lead to cross-examination, well, that sounds like those matters might be material. Nevertheless, we would facilitate any process by which some questions can be put to Bishop Mulkearns whilst he remains alive, and we're subject to the Commission and the lawyers assisting the Commission's good guidance as to how that would occur. That's the submission I wish to make.
Anyone else there in Melbourne wish to say something in?
Yes, Your Honour, Jim Shaw for two survivor witnesses. I also would like to see the report. There is no reason whatsoever it shouldn't be provided at least to counsel in the same way Cardinal Pell's was. I'm instructed that the nursing home in question is a very short distance from the courthouse where the Commission will be sitting. Perhaps a 2-minute drive. I suggest that perhaps the Bishop could be brought there with appropriate medical support. If there's any problem, he can be quickly returned to the nursing home. I am told by my instructor, who is a Ballarat solicitor, that it is a very short distance indeed, and it's a pretty easy matter to get between the two locations. I'm also instructed that just about everyone in Ballarat knows where Bishop Mulkearns is living. In relation to what my learned friend Mr. Grace said about preparation for being questioned, I submit that cross-examination is a task where one does not want a witness to be prepared. Counsel is entitled to ask questions not on notice, and that's something that Bishop Mulkearns ought to be able to deal with. To simply say, well, we'll give you a list of our questions, and then you go away and prepare your answers would defeat the purpose in my submission. On the issue of the reliability or credibility of his evidence, the learned friend Mr. Grace referred to some matters in the report which suggested that Bishop Mulkearns is already saying that off his own bat that he's not a reliable and credible witness. Well, that is a matter for the Commission, Your Honour. And his reliability and credibility can be tested in cross-examination, and it can also be re-examined on by his own counsel. But what's to be made of the evidence, how much weight is to be given, whether it's credible, reliable, and so on, that's a matter for Your Honour and fellow commissioners. So I say that none of what my learned friend said about that really affects the application. Commission, please.
Anyone else down there? No? You want to say something?
The Commission, please. As I said to you, I represent 6 victims in the Ballarat case study. I had not anticipated the nature of this application this morning, and I therefore have no instructions from any of my clients to put a position to Your Honour. However, I don't press for access to the reports. It seems to me that Bishop Mulkearns' position is materially different from Cardinal Pell's, him being apparently terminally ill. I can understand that Bishop Mulkearns might not want the details of his clinical condition, given that he is terminally ill, to be made public to other people. Moreover, it appears to us at least, as I say without direct instructions as to a position, that the involvement of Bishop Mulkearns in the events that occurred in Ballarat is manifestly clear from the many documents that Counsel assisting has tendered, and it may well be that that evidence in any event is going to be of considerably more value to you and the other commissioners than Bishop Mulkearns decades after these events trying to recall the detail of what might have happened. Your Honour, please.
Meaning that you're not too concerned if he doesn't give evidence at all?
Yes, that's so. Again, without direct instructions as to that position, but that's my assessment of the situation from the documents that I have seen. If it were necessary, I could find my instructor in Melbourne and try and get some instructions from each victim.
Well, I think it might be. For this reason, Mr. Grace, you have foreshadowed the proposition that the medical reports may lead me and the other commissioners to conclude that Bishop Mulkearns' evidence is unreliable, in which event him giving evidence would seem of little purpose. Now, before, however, one takes that any further, in fairness, counsel for the survivors would need to understand what the reports are actually saying. I'm presently minded, subject to what you might say, to conclude that the only fair thing to do is to give them access on the same basis as the reports in relation to Cardinal Pell, so they can understand what might be the limitations upon Bishop Mulkearns giving evidence in any event. Do you understand?
Yes, I understand, and I'm prepared to make available to my friends at the bar table here, provided they give the similar undertaking they gave in relation to Cardinal Pell, these reports.
Very well.
Could I also seek the further undertaking that the contents of these reports do not form the part of any cross-examination of Bishop Mulkearns, if that is to occur?
I won't require that undertaking. I would consider that matter if and when it arises for consideration. But if I thought it was going to be unfair, then obviously I would stop counsel from asking questions. At the moment, though, all I would seek is an undertaking that the contents of the report not be communicated to others.
Not communicate to solicitors and clients?
Yes, that's right. To others, anyone else. Just counsel can look at it themselves. Do I have that undertaking from both of you in Melbourne? Or all three of you, I think, yeah.
I'm prepared to give the undertaking as clarified by Your Honour, that the report be provided to Counsel, and I'll make some submissions about the utility of where we stand.
Yeah.
Yes, I give that undertaking. Would it be possible to get copies of this report? It's considerably longer than the one relating to Cardinal Pell.
I don't...
Just for the facility, just make it easier for us to read it.
Well, yeah, it'll have to be returned, though.
We could do that. We could
I don't...
make some copies and give them back to the clerk.
I assume we can do that down there?
I'm getting some nods from the...
Very well. Well, we can do that, but they'll have to be returned when you've read them.
Yes, I'll give that undertaking.
Yes, very well. Is there anyone else I need an undertaking from? No. Do you wish to see the reports?
Well, given that Your Honour's minded to release them on that basis, I am now instructed to give the undertaking and to view the reports.
Very well. Mr Gray, I've been ignoring you. Is there anything you want to say about this?
No, Your Honour. We see this as a matter for the Commission, and that we really can add nothing.
Well, I think I should adjourn, Ms Vanessa, to allow Counsel the opportunity to have a look at these reports. It may take a little longer. There's a few more pages and a bit more detail to digest them with Cardinal Pell. So what I'll do is I'll take the equivalent of a morning adjournment now, and then we'll come back and hear you further in relation to what should happen.
Just one matter before you do that, Your Honour. My friend tendered a report from Ballarat Cancer Care dated the 18th of October. Now, the only report I have is one dated the 16th of October, and I'm assuming it's the same report.
It is the 16th of October. There's only one report in October, and there's one in December.
Yes, very well.
I take it Counsel Assisting has got both of those.
Yes, the issue was the report I have is the 16th of October, not the 18th. But if you've clarified that you were tendering, you meant to tender the 16th of October report, then we have that.
Yes, that's the report.
Very well. Well, I'll adjourn, and you can let the clerk down there know when you're ready in Melbourne to resume, and we'll receive your further submissions. Again, it's very unlikely that I'll make a decision today, but I'll determine what I'll do when I hear what else you have to say. Very well. I'll adjourn.